Welcome back to Haunted Road Trip, where we are taking a trip across the country to find the most haunted places in your state and in mine. Today we will be looking at the state of Arizona. This is the most haunted places in Arizona. Let's go. Our first stop on our haunted road trip is Flagstaff, Arizona, the Monte Vista Hotel. Built in 1927, the Monte Vista Hotel has housed many famous names such as Michael J. Fox and the late Bob Hope. However, these celebrities are nowhere near as colorful as its gallery of resident spirits. According to the hotel's website, spirits such as the Meat Man, who was a regular guest who would hang raw meat from the chandeliers in his room, or the late bank robber who bled to death in the Monte Vista's downstairs cocktail lounge in 1970, supposedly all haunt this place. There's also the Phantom Bellboy, which is an infant who cries out from the hotel's basement, and the spirit of an elderly woman that reportedly can be seen in a rocking chair near the window of room 305. Drastic temperature changes are also reported to happen in this room. Just next door, in room 306, two prostitutes in the early 1940s were renting this room. The two women were working and then thrown out the window by a disgruntled customer. Since then, guests staying in this room have felt a sensation of being watched, and men who have rented this room have awoken to not being able to breathe and the feeling like they are being choked. One other room that is full of activity is room 220. The room has reported getting very cold and the bed turns soggy in the middle of the night. Let's hear a testimony from people who have stayed in this hotel. Our first story comes from a user named Beth, and they said, "My family and I went through here, and we had some paranormal activity too. We went down to the basement and could hear the dancing people. Then it was said that sometimes people could hear the cry of a baby, and we did. Then we went up the stairs and one of the doors had opened on its own when we passed by. Then the mysterious 5th or 6th floor was there, and I ran down the stairs in fear, just for the elevator to open just as I reached the bottom of the stairs. I screamed and ran in." Here's a story from a user named Coda. "I was with my friends in Flagstaff, Arizona. It was raining and our vehicle had broken down. We were near the downtown part of Flag, and the Monte Vista Hotel was the first thing that caught our attention. We grabbed all of our things and ran to the hotel. We asked for a room, and the mysterious thing that caught us off guard was that the receptionist told us to be careful and that it was dangerous. We looked at each other weird and grabbed the key from her and went up to our room. I called my mom and told her what happened and that the roads were closed because of the bad rainstorm. She was worried, of course, but there was nothing we could do about it but wait it out. I went out into the hallway and heard someone walking behind me. Everyone I was there with were inside, and I turned to look. There was nothing. I kept hearing the footsteps, then someone tapped me on my shoulder hard. I turned to see what it was, and there was a pen in front of my feet. I freaked out and went inside, where I told them. They told me they heard someone in the hall, but I was standing there the entire time. It was weird but cool." Our second stop on our haunted road trip is the Yuma State Prison in San Luis, Arizona. The Yuma State Prison was built in 1875. On July 1st, 1876, the first 7 inmates entered the territorial prison at Yuma and were locked into the new cells which they had built themselves. A total of 3,069 prisoners, including 29 women, lived within these walls during the prison's 33 years of operation. A documented 111 deaths occurred here, many of which were attributed to tuberculosis and the dank, horrible conditions the prisoners endured. The conditions were so terrible that many prisoners tried to escape. Of the many prisoners who attempted, 26 were successful and 8 died from gunshot wounds. Many of these lost souls are said to still wander the dark, cold corridors and cells to this very day, still angry at their captors who delivered their punishments. These punishments included the dark cell, which was a cell carved into a rock face. Prisoners would be tossed in this cell only in their underwear and given bread and water only once a day. Some stayed in this cell for months on end. It was also referred to as the snake den by some of the prisoners because the guards would sometimes drop a snake or a scorpion on the prisoner from the ventilation shaft on the ceiling of the cell. Another form of punishment was the old ball and chain for those who tried to escape. And the last form of punishment was a cage outside with a tin roof in the middle of the prison yard, where the prisoner would have to endure the harsh elements in front of their fellow inmates. Despite this and the prison's infamous reputation, the historical written record indicates that this prison was humanely administered and was a model institution for its time. Prisoners had free time, during which they handcrafted many items to be sold at public bazaars held at the prison on Sundays after church. Prisoners also had regular medical attention and access to a good hospital. Many of the local residents were even mad with jealousy that the prison had better amenities than a majority of their homes, including forced ventilation, electricity, a sanitation system including 3 showers and 2 bathtubs. Inmates also had a prison band, a 2,000-book library, which was the biggest library in the entire town of Yuma, and to top it all off, it contained the only 3 flushing toilets in this whole surrounding area. By 1907, however, the prison was severely overcrowded, and there was no room on Prison Hill for expansion. Convicts constructed a new facility in Florence, Arizona, and the last prisoner left Yuma on September 15, 1909. After the prison was closed down, it quickly got renovated into the Yuma Union High School. The empty cells provided free lodging for many homeless families in the 1920s during the Great Depression, even though these cells sometimes reached temperatures upwards of 118 degrees. Nowadays, the site has been made into a museum which is open to the public, but its terrible history has left something behind besides its buildings and guard towers, which are all still standing to this day. This historic site is now home to many of the prisoners who never left. In one of the most active cells is the spirit of an outlaw named John Ryan, an inmate who was hated by both his peers and the guards of the prison. He committed suicide in his cell, Cell 14. Common occurrences in this cell include temperature changes and even the appearance of the full-body apparition of John Ryan himself, who appears as a white silhouette with shining eyes. It's not just the spirits of the prisoners that are believed to haunt here. There's reportedly the ghost of a little girl who likes to play pranks on unsuspecting visitors, poking and pinching them with her icy cold fingers. The girl apparently died as families moved into the prison during the Great Depression. In the courtyard of the prison is said to be at least 2 spirits, one of whom is reported to enjoy singing. If you are interested in visiting this place for yourself, the museum has a day tour. The tickets are on sale for $8. Let me know what you find. Our next stop is the Vulture Mine of Wickenburg, Arizona. The Vulture Gold Mine was discovered in 1863, 70 miles north of current-day Phoenix, by Henry Wickenburg. Wickenburg sold the gold mine before anyone had determined its true wealth. The new owners claimed he never had a clear title to the property and refused to pay Henry the price they agreed upon. Henry continued to search for gold after. However, he never struck it lucky again, and he regretted selling the mine for the rest of his life. During its years of operation, the Vulture Gold Mine produced $200 million worth of gold, making it the most productive mine in the state of Arizona's history. The mine was so profitable, it brought people from all over the country searching for its treasures. So many people came, in fact, that they started a settlement, and thus Vulture City was built in 1866. The mine supported a mining community of 5,000 people. It would fuel the development of Arizona and the city of Phoenix. A lot of crimes were committed in this town during its years of operation, including murder, rape, and the stealing of gold. However, there was no court or jailhouse in the town, so many of the criminals were hung on the hanging tree by a committee of vigilantes without a trial. In total, there are 18 recorded hangings in Vulture City. The way they hung the criminals was especially gruesome. They would put the accused atop of a rock and sling them up to the tree. Once they were hung up, they would kick out the rock from underneath them. At this point, the hanging person could just barely stand on their tiptoes. However, eventually their tiptoes would get tired and they would hang themselves. Hangings by this method were said to have lasted anywhere from 2 minutes to 2 hours. During World War II, President Roosevelt ordered the mine closed in 1942 because it was not essential to the war efforts. Everyone left believing they would return in a few months when the war was over. They never did. Nowadays, the mine is a ghost town, not just because all of its inhabitants left, but because some of them never did. The Ghost Adventures crew paid a visit to this mine in early 2010. If their exploits are to be believed, they had rocks thrown at them, and they had voice recordings of apparitions telling them to get out and you're gonna die. Other paranormal encounters include the smell of food in the mess hall, as well as the sound of pots and pans banging in the kitchen as the ghosts prepare a meal that's not really there. One who can attest to this was a caretaker by the name of Russ Hunting. In the year 1990, one night he was working the mess hall alone, and then he reported hearing voices cheering him and telling him he was doing a good job, and nobody was there. He said the voices repeatedly called him Ben. In 1996, Russ died, and his friends fulfilled his last remaining wish to scatter his ashes at the old mining town. At the abandoned brothel, it is said a prostitute known as Mexican Rita still haunts the building. Many have seen shadows move in the building, along with the sounds of cowboy boots walking back and forth on the old wooden floors. And some have claimed to have even heard whispers inside the building. One of the workers in the old generator room was said to have been caught by the gears of the generator and grinded up by the machine. A voice will sometimes call up from the old generator, thought to be the man who was grinded up there by the machinery. The old schoolhouse is said to be the most haunted of all the buildings and the most hostile place in the entire town. Some of the paranormal events said to occur here are silhouettes in the doorway. Voices of children have been heard, as well as knocking on the walls, and people have even reported being hit and pushed. Millions of dollars worth of gold and silver are said to still be at Vulture Mine for those brave enough to seek it. Our stop on our haunted road trip is the Jerome Grand Hotel in Jerome, Arizona. Built in 1927 as a hospital, this was where the local miners came after suffering gruesome injuries while digging for copper, many of whom died from their injuries. The hospital was also home to a psych ward where the insane of the town were brought to be cured, many of which committed suicide. The hospital closed in 1950. The building remained empty for 46 years until its grand reopening as a hotel in 1996. However, its vacancy did nothing but strengthen the energy of the spirits who lived there. Some of these spirits include the maintenance man of the old hospital, Claude Harvey, who was found at the bottom of the service elevator shaft. The elevator was found to be in working order, and the death was investigated as a homicide. Several guests of the hotel, while acting as paranormal investigators, have reported a ghostly figure of Claude Harvey in the basement, staring vacantly at the closed elevator doors. Others have reported hearing a distant whistling, the sounds of a man dutifully performing his maintenance routine, even from beyond the grave. Considering the hotel served as a hospital in its previous incarnation, it is no surprise that guests often hear the haunting wails and cries of its former inhabitants. Sounds of labored breathing, coughing, and screaming have often been reported within the common areas, halls, and stairwells of the Jerome Grand Hotel. One such inhabitant is known as the Bearded Man and appears to visit numerous rooms on various floors of the hotel. Others claim to see a nurse roaming the halls with a clipboard, stopping at each room, almost like she is checking on the patients who aren't actually there. Others have seen sightings of the spirit known as the Woman in White. Legends say the woman died in childbirth and she now runs down the hallways looking for her child. The hotel is even home to a ghostly form of a feline. Numerous guests have reported feeling a ghost cat brushing up against their leg, leaving an imprint on their bed from its catnap, and one guest even captured a photo of the cat. The picture has now been framed and still sits upon the front desk of the hotel. The most popular of all these rooms, available for guests to retire after an evening of ghost hunting, is room 32. The room is well known as the most haunted room in the hotel. after having been the location of not one, but 2 suicides. One man leapt from the balcony to his death, while another turned his gun on himself. Guests who dare to attempt to sleep in this room are awoken by the sounds of the doors opening by themselves and of water streaming from the faucets that have apparently turned themselves on full blast. Other paranormal occurrences are random phone calls to the front desk from rooms that are empty, lights turn on and off by themselves, and the smell of flowers come from nowhere. If hunting for ghosts at this historic hotel, decked out with high-tech paranormal detection equipment, appeals to you, then Jerome Grand Hotel is where you should book your stay. The ghost hunt costs $30 per adult and is offered on select weeknights. And as an added bonus for the ghost hunters, you'll receive a 10% discount on your stay. Let's take a look at a testimony from people who have stayed at this hotel. This story comes from a user named Gary, and he says, "This is the most haunted place I've ever stayed. Stayed here in late December of 2009. During the day on the 4th floor, heard a gust of wind, followed by the words, 'Who's there?' At night, sleeping in a room on the 2nd floor, I was awakened twice. Once by a loud bang of what I describe as a boot stomping on the floor next to my bed. The second time, the sheets were literally pulled off me and thrown across the room. Stayed up all night trying to take pictures in the hallways but didn't catch anything. But the elevator kept moving on its own, and it doesn't work without a key. When leaving the next day, when I opened the door to the hallway of the 2nd floor to do a last-minute check for any luggage I left, a cold, chilling breath blew in my right ear and scared the crap out of me. They have a book downstairs that guests have recorded numerous other hauntings." But now I want to know what you guys think. Which one looks the scariest? Let us know in the comments below. We hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please leave a like and maybe even subscribe for more great content. We do all the research so you don't have to. And as always, I'm Alex, and I hope you have a fantastic day. This is the end, and good riddance. It's evident that the minutes of rap is too high of a significance for me to handle, so I'm flying off of it. Spraying bullets with my pen at anyone who is standing opposite. All these rappers talking fake shit nowadays. If it's not about fucking a girl or going to a rave, then there ain't no bars. I don't do no Drake shit, that's why I'll never make it that far. But I gotta say some shit before I get in the car.